Welcome to Legends in Leadership, brought to you by ISF and the Carrington Group. Legends in Leadership is an inspirational podcast featuring the stories of leaders who are making a difference. Our goal is to inspire you with the stories of leaders who come from humble beginnings, overcome challenges, and ultimately rise up to make a difference in people's lives.
Well, good morning, folks. This is Tyler Tallman. I want to welcome you to Legends in Leadership. I'm a family officer with the Carrington Group and want to welcome my co-host today on our podcast, Dr. Blair Ritchie, who's the Executive Director of the International Student Foundation, and Jason Smith, who's also a family officer and a partner of mine with the Carrington Group. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
We like to kick things off each week with a little bit of leadership trivia. We're fascinated by the stories of leaders who, like us, come from humble beginnings and then rise up as a leader to make a difference in people's lives. So, Dr. Blair, what do you have teed up for us this week?
All right. You know, the last few times I've gone history on you way back, so I thought I'd kind of do something more contemporary. So this is a contemporary of ours. So maybe you might know this one. I didn't, but when I did a little research, this is a
Don't count on it.
Great story. Today's legend is a contemporary leader who has a super inspirational story of overcoming tremendous odds. She actually grew up in a housing project in New York, raised by a single mother, no extra money laying around. But this leader had a mother who valued education and made sure that she attended good schools. So after graduating, she started as an intern with Xerox. And after hustling her way into a master's degree in mechanical engineering, she started to climb the ladder at Xerox. And she was good at climbing. In fact, climbed all the way to the top. Did you know this? That the CEO today of Xerox worked her way into that position from an intern position with a company. So who is this inspirational woman? I'll be back at the end of today's program with the answer to today's trivia.
Does anybody know the answer to that?
That's a good one.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
All right. Google time.
Awesome. Thanks, Blair. Well, we're excited today about our guest, Jake Horn. Jake is a partner with a technology company in North Dallas called Trustantial. Trustantial is a company that helps mid-market and enterprise businesses accelerate their productivity using best-of-breed ERP and CRM software solutions. Jake has 19 years of technology and management experience that spans across industries such as financial, commercial real estate, insurance, construction, internet, manufacturing, distribution, and energy. He's experienced in CRM solution implementation, business analysis, project and program management, team leadership, architecting custom software solutions. Jake is specialized in CRM technologies and possesses knowledge and experience in all stages of the system's development life cycle. Jake's a graduate of Texas A&M. He's an Aggie. Yep. Got a Bachelor of Business degree in Information and Operations Management. And outside of work, Jake enjoys playing golf when it warms up. We were talking a little bit about that this morning, and really enjoys watching Texas A&M football. So, Jake, welcome to the show. Yeah. We're excited to share some of your story with our listening audience.
Great. I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to it. So.
Well, what we'd like to do is rewind the tape just a little bit. Let's go back to your childhood. Where did you grow up? And tell us a little bit about the things that you learned growing up that have helped you most as a leader.
So I grew up in Garland, and I have a joke that people that grow up in Garland don't know it's Garland until they get out of Garland, right? So, but I grew up in Garland, went to South Garland High School. My father was a football coach for South Garland High School during the early years of my life, and then he became an administrator in the school business. And in that, I think from a leadership perspective, that the expectations were fairly high for a kid, and I was an only child, so like all of the effort of my parents were focused on me, and so went to high school and played football during growing up and all of those things, and started to get good at it during my high school years. And
what positions did you play?
I was an offensive lineman, so played offensive line throughout my career since Pee Wee, and but I was a kid that to go with those expectations. I remember growing up when I was, I guess, in 6th grade or 7th grade. My dad said, "Okay, You're done with school at like 3:50. You're not coming home. You need to go to the gym, and I've set up a gym that they'll let you come and work out. So like there was some, from as far as I can remember, there was some like your expectations are working hard, right? And that's not an option. And I'd say that from a leadership perspective, that kind of molded it. I mean, I was lucky to have a father that instilled that. And there's a part of me that looks back and says, or when I was going through it, I was, this is not fair. I was doing a lot of things from a kid perspective that you would do. But now looking back to it, I mean, there's a lot of things I rely on there. But so grew up and was in high school, started getting good at football. And because when you're as large as I am, I'm a 6'4", 300-pound kid. You're generally pretty clumsy until you hit a certain age, right? And so started to get good in my junior and senior year and got recruited to go play football for Texas A&M University. I was recruited by a lot of big schools, but my family are Aggies. And so, went off to do that. And I think from a leadership perspective, there's a great glory story here. Go play football at Texas A&M. That's not how it worked out for me. So I got there, and up until this point, I had been a guy who had pretty much just done what people told me and worked hard and been successful. And when I got to college, very quickly I realized that genetically and the work ethic that I had, like I'd worked hard, but it was easy, right? And so at A&M, it was hard. And from a physical gifts perspective, I just wasn't, I went from being the best to being the worst. Mm-hmm. And so I played there for 3.5 years. I was on scholarship, and and during that time frame, I learned a lot though, and about myself and about other people. And I met some great coaches. R.C. Slocum's a great guy. And one of the guys that I learned a lot from was Mike Sherman, who ended up being the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. And Mike Sherman would say a lot of things to us that I can't say. But what he did is he expected excellence. And he worked on the details, and so that helped a lot too. And one of the things that people don't get about being an athlete and at that level is when we really talk about like every play in every practice we review on film, and the level of detail that we go to is, I'm an offensive lineman. You think you just power off and push people out of the way, right? It's we would get into, okay, your first step needs to be a 3-inch step this direction or a 6-inch step this direction, or you need to pull, it's minute levels of detail, because at that level, the challenge is, everybody's pretty even, and it comes down to inches. And so that's where you learn an attention to detail. But back, I'll kind of say from a shaping perspective, that being hard and having to struggle through that really shaped kind of how I move forward and my leadership style now, because I had to get through some of those challenges to really figure out what it took to be pretty good.
So talk a little bit about that. You said, man, I went from first to last.
Right.
What was that like emotionally for you, having to deal with that?
It was challenging, and I'll tell you, it took me about 10 years to kind of come to terms with that experience, because what happens too is at that level when all you've really ever done is been a football player, and I think this is one of the reasons the guys in the NFL have. And other athletes have such a trouble transitioning. Yeah. Your identity is tied into what you do, and then it's gone, because every athlete's career ends, and it usually ends on I'm not good enough. And when it's done, there's a major transition you have to go through emotionally, and it was challenging. And I mean, I did fine, you know, during life after football, but I was always kind of floundering a little bit, like not living up to the potential because of, you know, fear of this happen first, and then what would, you know, and it took some time and some effort and some reflection and some, you know, hard work emotionally, and I was able to get through it, and I'm better for it. But it was something that that was challenging for me at the time, for sure.
I know Jake to be a pretty smart guy, and so let's talk a little bit about your life at A&M outside of football. You went on to get a business degree in operations management. So talk a little bit about that and how that led into your profession and the path to where you are now.
So growing up, I liked two things. I liked, you know, outside of like social life and girls and stuff like that, right? I liked two things. I liked football and I liked computers. I saw the movie War Games and I thought it was super cool, and then my parents bought me a computer and I started diving into that, and computers made a lot of sense to me. They're really logical. And so when I got to A&M, I initially got into computer science, and computer science is hardcore engineering. It's not, you know, there's computer science and then there's the business side of technology, and I was much more capable in that business side of technology, and I like interacting with people and helping them through the business processes. So I gravitated towards that with some advisory that I got from, you know, some of the advisors we have access to, and really started to focus. I got lucky too, because not a lot of people, when you go and pick a major, it's something that you can do 20 years down the road. Excuse me. and I just got lucky to be at the right place at the right time with the way the economy is going, right, with technology. And so I graduated and got into technology consulting, and have been doing technology consulting mostly in the CRM space. So if people are familiar with things like Salesforce and those type of tools, I've mostly in those areas for ever since college, really. And you know, slowly just moved up the ranks in different firms and whatnot, and then, you know, I can get into, you know, what change happened for me to kind of say, hey, I'm gonna put my stake in the ground. And
yeah, so we could talk a little bit about that. Let me ask it this way. I mean, you're 20 years into your career now, so you're in your prime. And so I'm curious, after your experiences at A&M and your setbacks and disappointments with football, what advice would you give yourself as a fresh 20-something graduating just out of college, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, knowing what I know now, I'd probably give them I would give them to have perspective. So one of the things that I had to do is, when I came out of school, and I had basically defined for myself that my athletic career was ended on failure, and I had failed on a fairly public, you know, plane, right? Like all my friends and all my parents' friends and all that stuff. They really wanted me to do well, and you know, it just didn't work out that way. But what I had to do, and the advice that I would have, is look at those failures and reframe them of what did you actually really achieve in that? And because, so if you look at that situation for me, I got to play football in a major college that was competing for championships. And yeah, I wasn't the best on that team, but that's an achievement. But my perspective of that achievement for a long time was not that. It was, I wasn't good enough. And so my advice to people would be to really take stock in what you've done, and not especially if you have a type A personality and you're achievement oriented, don't over, set yourself up for feeling like you didn't do a very good job because you're just looking at it the wrong way.
We've never had a story where someone didn't fail their way to success.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what you just described is huge about how you frame that.
Yeah, it's you've got to look at it like, what did I gain out of this, and what did I learn, and that's just an experience that I can. It's not me. It's just an experience, and I can move forward. And I don't think we do a very good job of teaching people how to do that.
We don't. No.
We spend a lot of time putting people in boxes and just saying this is what they are, and that's not.
Pre-show, we talked a little bit about corporate America, and I think it's a great segue into where you are in your journey today. Yep. And as you look at our culture today, Jake, what do you see as the greatest challenge that's facing leaders going forward, and what's your plan for dealing with that?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that when I worked in corporate America, I saw both good and bad, and really I saw that the organizations aren't built right now. The average company out there is not built to generate leaders, and what our society needs and what the world needs is people that have leadership skills. And so, we looked at that, and part of it was.
So dive into that a little bit.
Sure.
What do you mean by that? When you say that corporate America is not, it's not set up to produce or to I guess grow leaders. What do you mean by that?
Well, when I started getting into management at consulting firms, I started realizing that the behind the scenes conversations in a lot of firms, not all are like this, were how much do we got to pay this guy to keep him from leaving?
Oh wow.
Or how much profit can we make off of this person working in this area? And when I looked at that, I said, well, that's not in the best interest of the, that's only looking at it from one angle, right? It's not looking at it as the best interest of the person and who's entrusted me with their career as a manager. And so that's really that the system is built to have labor and just have them doing the work and the folks who are kind of in those management positions.
And at the surface, so here are these corporate leaders.
Yeah.
At the surface, they think that the conversation they're having with you as a middle manager is what's going to make them profitable, right?
Right. Yeah.
But what they don't really understand is that by not creating these leadership opportunities for the entry level employees, they're really actually inhibiting themselves long term from going where they want to go, right?
Right. In the long term, it's not sustainable. And so now, don't get me wrong. There's some challenges of creating leaders across your organization. You have to grow to do that, but it's not sustainable. If I create an organization where, and we see it now in technology, where we're not growing people, then they have no loyalty to us, and they leave as soon as somebody comes with a better deal, and that's just the kind of the tactical aspect of it. There's the whole what's the right thing to do, and how would I want to be treated if I was in their position, and so it's just, at least in our industry, it's not sustainable because having a lot of folks who can't be leaders. I mean, we're asked by customers to come in and solve a lot of their tough problems with technology, and to have people who, if we're not generating people who can do that, then we're really failing. And so, it's a good segue into, we talked a little bit earlier about that we've put some systems in place to do that, and I've taken them from my experiences elsewhere. I won't take complete credit for it, but put some systems in to ultimately give people at different levels in their careers opportunities to move up and the opportunity to get leadership skills. So we define success when we deal with somebody who works at Trustantial as, are they better off when they leave than when they got here? Because it's going to be long term. It's going to be difficult for everybody to, become not everybody can be CEO, right? And so, but can they come in? Can they grow their career and go be a leader in another organization? If we can do that, then we've done our job. If we can't, then and it's an experiment. I mean, this is something that nobody's really doing, at least at our size.
So especially in the technology space, how do you deal with the very technically capable people who don't necessarily make good leaders?
Right.
But they're fantastic at what they do. What does that path look like for them when there's not so much of maybe a leading people,
Sure.
but there's such a thought leader, a visionary,
Right.
a technologist?
Yeah, and so that's one of the problems we're going to have to face as we grow. And I think there's different types of leadership in business. There's, I can go lead a group of people to take the hill, that type of leader. And then there's, the person behind the scenes who's really making the plan to lead the people to go take the hill. And they're both equally important. And so there are those technical people. What I do believe is those technical people need to be well-rounded enough that they can be serviceable in those other areas. So, you need to be well-rounded enough to where you can at least go and manage a small team of people, or because the challenge of business is that you're always thrown into different situations, and so you have to be well-rounded. What we try to do with those people is we take areas where they're not as good, and we try to give them opportunities to kind of flex those muscles. So if there's somebody who hasn't had an opportunity managing a project, we want to give them a project. Now we look for what I term as low risk opportunities, where they're not, we're not throwing them into the deep end and saying sink or swim, because if we do that, we end up in a situation like I got into coming out of college, right? Where
you just feel like you failed.
You failed,
Yeah.
and then life, like that's just not healthy, right? And so we look for low risk opportunities where they can start to cut their teeth on whatever skill it is, whether it's project management, or sometimes there's non-technical people who, we might say, hey, you need to get a little bit more technical because that's a deficiency. And so we take them through a process of highlighting areas where they might need to improve, and then offering, low risk opportunities for them to do that, and they'll grow. And I've been really pleased at seeing people work through this process.
So really what they end up with is this set of small successes.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
versus, hey, I'm going to go throw you in the ocean,
Right.
swim.
Yeah.
Versus I'm going to give you a couple of opportunities to go out and show that you can be good in
Right.
that area, which then boosts their self-esteem and confidence, and creates a culture that you're looking for as well.
And that's when we started this business, the three of us, the three partners. One of my partners had been in business in a small consulting organization, but we all that's our philosophy is, let's start with small successes, let's build on those successes, and then create, the metaphor, I love metaphors, and the metaphor I use is it's a flywheel, right? And so you create momentum. And I think from a leadership perspective, it's key to doing that. It's to setting up a waterfall of successes, and then working yourself through the setbacks, and learning from them. And that's key when we're either dealing with the individual or dealing with the company as a whole. Because trying to jump in the deep end sometimes you can swim, but a lot of times you're going to sink, and it can be challenging.
So Trustantial recently made the Dallas Business Journal top 100 fastest growing companies in DFW. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about Trustantial. What's your firm doing to help your clients apply technology to really maximize the value for your clients?
Yeah, so most companies, they need, at their core, they need two systems. It's a system to manage accounting. A lot of people call that ERP, and then they need a system to manage their customers and the relationships with them, and the acronym is CRM. And we really focus on helping organizations maximize their investments in those tools. And we look at it as, we focus on the solutions that help you run your business. And so and there's a lot that has to do with that, and it can be different everywhere. And it's a prescriptive aspect. We come in, have some discussions, and really dive deep, because every business is different. And then we come in and provide services and additional software or whatever you need. We really pride ourselves on focusing on that software level. And right now, businesses and executives are in a position where they're not technical people most of the time, and they need to leverage technology in order to be successful. And we try to do that with a sense of humility, because we know that that's a
sensitive topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenging topic. I wouldn't want. I mean, if I have to be, if I absolutely have to use something to be successful, and I know very little about it, I don't really like talking about it.
Yeah.
And so
I tell people often, Jake, that I know just about enough about technology to be dangerous,
right?
And I can be really, really dangerous,
right? Yeah.
Let me ask you this: folks that are not really sure whether or not your firm's a good fit for them,
sure.
How do they explore you guys' solutions and the things that you can offer them to help them maximize these options?
It's very much a consultative experience. It's really just having a conversation, talking about what you're doing today, what you want to do, and then we either, if it's something we can help you with, we prescribe a solution for that, or we might say, hey, there's some other vendors that we don't want to do what we're not good at. Okay. And that's really key for us as well.
So what's the best way for folks to get in touch with Trustantial?
Just reach out on the website. They can call our number, or info@trustantial.com. If you fill out a form on the web, it goes to info@trustantial.com. So awesome. Those are and Trustantial is trust and substantial put together. So it's a little bit hard to spell, but
nice.
Yeah.
Really fascinating stuff. As we wrap up today, Jake, one of the things that we like to find out and wrap up each of our shows with is what's a book that you can think of that's been most valuable to you in your leadership journey?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably kind of cliche, but Good to Great. Mainly because it talks about doing the little things and the details and putting people. It takes all the things that like a football team is you got to get people in the right positions and all that stuff, and kind of boils it down to business. So that's one of the ones that I really like. So
awesome. It's been great having you on the show today. This has been fun. Hope you had a good time. We sure did.
Yeah, flew by.
Yeah, so, it always does. Yeah. As we wrap up, we got to go back over to Blair and find out what was our answer to our weekly trivia.
I love the conversation, Jake, about business cultures that actually focus on developing people,
right,
and growing leaders, and that's what this story is about someone who comes in as an intern and walks out as the CEO, and that person is Ursula Burns.
Okay, all right,
Ursula Burns.
Don't know.
Fascinating story. Encourage people to
research,
get inspired by her story.
It is amazing each week as we do this trivia, how many folks start off from the lowest level position in their respective companies and then end up on top. So very empowering and inspiring. Well, that's a wrap today, folks, for our podcasts. On behalf of the Carrington Group, the International Student Foundation, and our special guest, Jay Korn, this is Tyler Tolman wishing you a good day. Remember this: if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are a leader. Have a great week.
Legends in Leadership is brought to you by ISF and Carrington Group. ISF is committed to leadership development for aged-out foster care and orphan youth. ISF's mission is to transform these youth into tomorrow's leaders with scholarships, mentoring, and leadership training. Google International Student Foundation to learn more. Carrington Group is a family office with a passion for helping business leaders and their families make smart choices and fulfill their highest aspirations. Google Carrington Group Dallas, Texas to learn more.
Securities offered through Regulus Advisors, LLC. Member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Regal Investment Advisors, LLC, and SEC Registered Investment Advisor. Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors are affiliated entities. Carrington Group and this broadcast are independent of Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors.